There's been some funny stories over the years. I mean, we had some neighbours that lived down the road who had a little Toyota Corolla. It wasn't even their car, it was their mum's car. And they saw us roar around the paddock there one day. They pulled up, there's a highway, went straight past the paddock where we were sitting. So they pulled up near our driveway and they were looking in, watching us race around the track everywhere. And next minute they just drove up our driveway, straight in the gate, straight out on the track in their mum's Corolla, 5 of them in the car, and they started ramming us. They were ramming us and racing around everywhere. Anyway, my brother got sick of that and ended up giving them a good hit and tipping them over. So they were in a lot of trouble for that. I remember that really well. But we had some great memories from racing around the paddocks in those days. Hi, my name's Michael Roach and this is my Mazda RX7 Series 2 1983 model. Which I've owned for the last 12 months. I'm in the process of setting it up to do some street sprints and hill climbs with it. It's a great little car. I've always liked Rotaries, and as soon as this thing come up for sale, I just had to grab it. It's getting harder and harder to find them nowadays in good condition. They're all starting to rust away, a lot of them. Ones that sit around anyway, unless they're being really looked after. The history side of things go back a fair bit with me. Back in my teenage years when I was originally living up in Toowoomba, I used to have an RX2 Capella rally car, and I also had an RX4 Coupe as my street car. Had a lot of fun with them. I'm a mechanic by trade, so I've always been interested in these rotary engines and been fascinated by the way they work. This one here runs a 13B extended port motor built by Central Queensland Rotaries. Runs a 48mm downdraft Weber, and I've also just adapted a Allen Moffat airbox for the top of it with a cold air intake up the front, which are pretty hard to find nowadays. Good strong little engine. I've also added MSD ignition to it, and it's just a good strong little car. I've just put a set of 5.1 diff gears in the back of it, which has really livened it up to do the street sprints. Not so good on the highway, but for street sprints it's perfect, or any hill climbs. It just gets the thing going through the gears really well. I've also added a half bond cage in the back of it, a really good race seat and 6-point harness in it. Slowly setting it all up. I've got the window net for the other side. I've already taken it up to Morgan Park. I had a run up there with it around the circuit. It goes really well, but I've certainly got to do something with the brakes if I'm going to do circuit racing, because the brakes run out after 3 laps. But for what purpose I'm going to use it for, it's going to be okay for that. For a one hot lap, it's going to be perfect. The reason I sort of picked the RX7 was I've always liked the early series 1, 2 and 3, the shape. I think they look great with the flares and the spoilers on them. I've got a front spoiler coming for it, which I've ordered. And I just really like the shape of them, the stance of them on the road, and they handle really well as well. You know, after having the RX2 Capella and the RX4, they were good cars too, a little bit older. And that's where I find the RX7 is just a little bit better for what I want, the purpose I want to use it for. With the RX2 Capella rally car that I had years ago when I was young, it had a full Bridgeport motor in it, built by Whipple's Mazda in Toowoomba, and it was a really fast little car. Great to race, handled really well. It was all on dirt, mostly rally stuff, and it was good. I didn't do a lot of races with it, but had a lot of fun with it until we rolled it and rode it off, and it wasn't repairable. So I pulled the motor and gearbox out of it, and I adapted all that into my RX4 Coupe street car, which was a bit hard to drive on the street at the time, but it was a lot of fun and made a lot of noise. Used to shoot flames out the back all the time. It was a pretty wild car. Good fun. All my mates loved it. Some people hated it because it was so loud, but I've always liked them. Even this thing's pretty loud to drive on the street, but some people hate them, some love them. I love them. I reckon they're great because they're just so different. And they're just good fun, really good fun to drive. And a lot of people think they're a very unreliable engine, but I disagree with that. I think if they're built properly, they're quite a reliable engine. If you maintain them and do what's got to be done to them, don't have any problems with them. This one's been, in the 12 months I've had it, once I sorted out the ignition problems it had, it's been a great car, been really, really good. And I took it up to Morgan Park there a couple of months ago. We were up there on a really hot day, and I basically took that car off the trailer and I give it a hiding all day long. Just really give it a hard time and didn't put a spanner on it all day. Drove it back on the trailer and we come home. So that sort of gives you a bit of an idea. They can be quite good once they're set up properly. I originally grew up on a farm on the Darling Downs, a little place called Clifton on the Darling Downs, about halfway between Toowoomba and Warwick. Got into machinery right from a young age, being on the farm, learned how to fix things, learned how to drive at a very early age, rode motorbikes around, and eventually as the teenage years come on, we end up building a speedway track beside the house on the farm. We're all a couple of mates down the road, all we got into the speedway side of things too, so we all had our own cars. There'd be nothing for 5 to 10 cars to be roaring around on the weekend around the track sometimes. And then I got into doing a fair bit of speedway racing. I was riding motocross and bikes quite a lot. We had our own motocross track, which I built years ago. The bike sort of took over from the cars there for a little while, and I was just doing motocross for quite some time until I moved here to the Gold Coast in 1988. And there's some really great memories with roaring around that paddock and some of the old cars that we used to have, you know. Things like the Mazda 808 that we totally wrecked. That was my sister's car originally. There's been some funny stories over the years. I mean, we had some neighbours that lived down the road who had a little Toyota Corolla. It wasn't even their car, it was their mum's car. And they saw us roar around the paddock there one day. They pull up, there's a highway, went straight past the paddock where we were sitting. So they pulled up near our driveway and they were looking in, watching us race around the track everywhere. And next minute they just drove up our driveway, straight in the gate, straight out on the track in their mum's Corolla, 5 of them in the car, and they started ramming us. They were ramming us and racing around everywhere. Anyway, my brother got sick of that and ended up giving them a good hit and tipping them over. So they were in a lot of trouble for that. I remember that really well. But we had some great memories from racing around the paddocks in those days. These flares that I got on this thing and the rear spoiler is not the full Group C Mazda racing ones that are available for these cars that they raced when Alan Moffat raced them back in the early 80s. They're a lot bigger flare, and the reason I haven't gone down that road, I was going to put them on, but I decided not to, simply because when you fit them up, you've actually got to cut the guards front and rear. They're allowed to put the bigger wheels on. I didn't want to butcher the original guards and everything underneath, so I've kept it original and put the smaller flares and spoiler on the back, and I've got, as I said before, I've got a front one coming for it. But they certainly look good with the big wheels and the big spoilers on them. They've got a beautiful looking car when they're set up in that race trim like that. But that's the reason why I've gone with these smaller units. Okay, the things I've added to this car since I've had it are the Alan Moffat Group C air intake, which goes down from the radiator with a K&N air filter pod on it. Gilmore Drive, I was having problems with the belt slipping all the time. It did have air conditioning on it when I got it. I've pulled the air conditioning compressor off. I don't really need air conditioning for what I'm using it for, so I put the Gilmore Drive on it. I put all the MSD ignition on the ignition system here. And just a couple of little tidy up bits. Mark from Custom Cuts at a run will make these shocky tower stuff, any stuff for the Mazda Rotaries, little plates on the engine here. He does some really trick stuff. It's worth going down to his shop and having a look at what he's got if you want to put some tricky little bits in your engine bay and even inside the car as well. He does the console insert as well on the dash, so you can put all the extra gauges and switches in. He does a really good job with it. I've also put in twin thermo fans on the front here. Got rid of the original fan on it. That's one of Mark's custom cut aluminium overflow bottles of his as well, and same with the radiator shroud. It's all stainless steel, and that's all about all I've done in here.